You did a great job of allaying one of my concerns I was going to ask about relative to TPP and NAFTA and GATT and the impact that might have. Do you still see us stepping through another 2 years of extreme volatility in the markets? You know, we've got all kinds of other legislative things that President-elect's going to do, but do you still see a lot of that volatility continuing?
Okay, so the question was about volatility in the markets, and the answer is likely yes. I think given where we are in the economic cycle, I will tell you one thing that could be a huge set of rocket fuel. If we got corporate tax reform, and I think that's probably the first thing we're going to get, corporate tax reform, sort of repatriation of all of those dollars back to the United States to invest in capital investment, I think that would be like a hugely positive event. Markets would celebrate that. It would be a great outcome for both markets and the country. So some of it is policy contingent. But do I think we are going to have more volatility in the world? Yes, I do, given where we are in sort of the lateness of the economic cycle, given the fact that we are, as we talked last night, you know, valuation is still pretty rich for most asset classes around the world, most stock and bond asset classes. So what that means is you sort of have to take some of that volatility that comes with sort of end of the economic cycle and the end of where markets get sort of really rich from a valuation perspective, right? So I think we have to go through a little bit of just accepting that volatility.
Let's take a question on that side of the room if anyone has a question. And way in the back.
Well, you've given a balanced assessment of the problems that face us and the intricate involvement between the many things that we can do. One of the concerns to me is that from whom do we expect to hear that kind of discussion from our legislative people? Who in Congress is going to speak out with balance instead of grasping onto one thing to rant and rave about as the problem that we have to solve?
So I wish I had the answer to you, because I'm trying to be an advocate in the world for this notion of balance. We ended up at the place where it used to be I'm right, you're wrong. Now we're at the place in the world where I'm right, you're evil. This is a very disconnected world. And many of these policymakers, and I think if Mrs. Clinton had been elected, one of the challenges she would have faced, I do think that there would have been some cooperation from the House Republicans because they want to get things done. But some of it would have been, there would have been so much fear of having a primary challenger, anybody that had sort of cooperated with her. I would like to think that balance comes from the fact that the electorate says, okay, I've woken up to the fact that we have this dislocation in the country, and we have to recognize that there is distrust of elites and elite opinion, and we can't deny it. We have to accept it now. We have to say, like, you know what? A lot of people are not benefiting. They feel left behind. They have anger and frustration. Now, that's part of it, right? Because I think those people feel like they haven't been being listened to. But okay, you've got my attention. I hear you loud and clear all around the world. But I would like to think that there is some notion that we have gotten back to the place where leadership is about finding a way to find some kind of common ground here. I actually think in this regard, Trump has some. Listen, Mr. Obama and George W. Bush had very little interest in legislative interaction, okay? Trump has very strong personal skills. He sort of builds his relationships on personal capital. And in fact, I actually think it might be one of his strengths to find a way to get things done by virtue of personal relationships, right? And I think you can find common ground on infrastructure spend. I think you can find common ground on corporate tax reform. There is a way there. I wish I had the answer for you. But I think what it is now that people have to be willing to say, this was a wake-up call. You got my attention, but now we have to do better, because I'll tell you, if we don't go back, if we don't fix it here, I will tell you, global capitalism is now on the sort of the line to prove itself. Yes, you can talk about reforming trade. We need to do better. But if we sort of rip up the way we've done things in the past, that's a very dark place to go down. In other words, economic nationalism is a very difficult world in which to live. So I would like to think that the wake-up call causes people to take a more balanced view. Will it happen? I don't really know.
I read a headline this morning that said that if Trump wins the election, you need to be looking out for your 401k. And I'm saying, why? There was no article behind it to tell anything about why he's making that statement.
Yeah, I think Paul would say last night, overnight, we had a sort of a big sell-off as foreigners were trying to digest what these news would meant. And I think over time, Trump can go a very long way to sort of establishing credibility with his economic team, and talking about pro-market policies. So I don't think you can connect the dots between Trump winning and saying that's bad for your 401k. These things are much more a function of things that go on in the real economy, valuation. So it makes for great headlines, but I don't think that's probably responsible journalism.
Let's show our appreciation to Craig Columbus.